Hello and welcome to the Smart Money Show. Today is episode 4, and we'll talk about how to simplify your budgeting. So, hello and welcome to the Smart Money Show. And the Smart Money Show is the place where we focus on how to get your dreams. And the only way to be smart about your money is to use it in a way that helps you achieve what you want in life. And for every person, that's going to be different. And there's no right or wrong. We're just working together to get you towards those dreams. So today, we're going to be talking about simple budgeting. And simple budgeting is something that is pretty easy because simply you shouldn't do it. So I'm a big proponent of not doing a budget, and we'll get to how to handle it differently, or to use cash flow management, and I'll take you step by step through that in a few minutes. But I just wanted to go over why I'm so against budgeting. And it really has to do with the fact that a budget is a reflection of the past. So you may write up your budget. It may be a nice sheet of paper where it's all worked out, or maybe a spreadsheet that you put together, maybe something that you obtained from somewhere else, giving you advice, could be from a book. And you'll fill it all out, all the details, and it's kind of like it's in stone. And that's primarily the reason why budgets don't really work very well. Is it's really hard to capture every actual expense in that budget. And there could be yearly expenses that are relatively minor but that you forget about because you look at it on a monthly basis. And it really is something that you want to have some flexibility with, right? So once you have that all written in stone, the apologize for the phone going off. Sorry, but I apologize for that. The sorry, this is a bit distracting. Um, so the I apologize for that phone ringing. That's a challenge with things going live and doing things this way. I missed that step of turning the phone off. So my apologies. But the the budget, when it's etched out in stone, is you go back to it, you refer back to it, and your spending in life doesn't necessarily match up with that. So when you go to reflect back on the budget, oh well, I already did that spending. I can't change what I already spent my money on, and so then it's pretty. Um, so all you do when you reflect backwards and you can't change the past, then you just feel guilty. You feel bad. You're demotivated. Oh, that went wrong. It didn't work. Or what you do is you try and move things around in the budget. So if I had so much for vacation, I haven't gone on my vacation yet. Well, maybe I'll reallocate that elsewhere so that I'm, so that's fixed or that appears to make the budget work. Well, what happens about later when you're planning to go on your trip, right? Or you may have already bought tickets because you have to plan your trip multiple months in advance. So how do you? It just really gets very difficult, and so that's why I seriously dislike the budget, and I simply recommend that you not do it. So what do you do? Well, the best thing is to really focus on your cash flow. And your cash flow is the money you have coming into your household after tax and the money that's going out of your household. Everybody's going to have major expenses that are pretty set in stone. And that could be many of your living expenses, some of your car expenses. And those are things that are hard to change, or realistically, you can only modify a little bit. So you want to make sure that that inflows and outflows at the right times, right? So different people are paid differently. So you may be paid weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And I remember one occupation when I was paid monthly, it was very hard to manage the inflows and outflows because it would get really tight near the end of the month before you get money coming over. And if it was a longer month, going 31 days, then that just made it even more difficult to manage. So you want to focus on when that money's coming in and when certain expenses are going out, and that's the cash flow that's happening. Now, what I've done is we've created a worksheet, a cash flow worksheet that I recommend you. There's a link in this live post, and I recommend that you go there and request to receive the cash flow worksheet that we've put together. Now, we'll go through it, and what you want to do is once you receive the link, it's one that's in Google Docs, and what you can do is once you're in there, you can go to File, and then you can say Make a Copy. And then once you make a copy, if you have a Gmail account or Google account, then you can just make a copy of it, save it locally, and you'll have your worksheet that you can edit, save, work from, and everything. The other alternative, if you do not use Google Docs and you prefer, you can download it as Microsoft Excel. But Google Docs works really well because it's freely available. So if you don't have Microsoft Excel, then that's not something that's going to keep you from doing what you want. So the cash flow sheet, I admit, looks very much like your typical budget worksheet. And the fact that it looks like a budget, it's not really so much what it is, it's how you use it. And so that's really what I want to go through. So what you can see is we have it broken up into housing costs. So these are your more regular monthly housing costs that you can expect. We also have your financial obligations. So financial obligations are any kind of regular savings that you may be doing. You may be putting money aside, and it may be into a savings account, but it could also be into other types of accounts that allow you to save. So that allows you to enter that here. And the The transportation costs also will be listed in there, and your medical costs will also be there. Now, something to look at here is in this worksheet, we have daily costs listed out and discretionary costs. And what makes this a cash flow worksheet instead of a budget is you can go ahead and enter those details. But your daily costs, which are groceries, clothing, and your discretionary costs, which is basically everything else you may do or spend money on outside of those more often referred to as fixed type expenses. Your daily costs and your discretionary costs are really where the bulk of your emotional spending will come from. And back in episode 2, we discussed emotional spending, how to look out for it, how to better manage it, and a strategy of how to manage that emotional spending. Now, when you look at the cash flow worksheet, the emotional spending areas, you'll never ever be able to capture that. And this is part of the reason why budgets are not accurate. And so on the cash flow worksheet, this is where you want to estimate what you spend on every month. And really what it does is, yes, it gives you an idea of the in and outflows of the cash, but the biggest thing, and especially when I'm doing cash flow plans for clients, it really helps me understand, where your spending priorities are and what things are important to you in life, right? So that, as a planner, that's useful for me, but for you, it just kind of gives you an outline of roughly where your expenses are going. And the reality is you're going to be spending more than what you list there. It's just not possible to remember and capture everything in finite detail right here. So the next part of this cash flow worksheet is really going under to the monthly debt payments. And so here is where you want to list any money that you owe, and also what you're paying towards that every month, because debt repayment, even minimum payments, will have a major effect on how much cash you have available. So go through that. You may have multiple mortgages, you may have multiple loans, and the loans section is where you put a car loan. Everything that you would total here, including also lines of credits, you can put multiple lines of credits there if you have them, and multiple credit cards. What this does is it totals your monthly payment and reflects it back on the monthly cash flow sheet. And those are highlighted in blue, as well as things that are automatically calculated for you. So the monthly debt payments is where you would put any money you owe on it. And also, I also recommend that in the monthly debt payments section, you list out the details, the interest rate, outstanding balance, who owns the debt. Is it you? Maybe a spouse? Maybe it's both of you. It's joint. And then just have that listed out. It'll give you a nice summary of where you have debt payments going and what you owe. And then the most important part of this cash flow worksheet is in the first section. You can put your monthly after-tax income. So essentially that's what you receive on your pay stub after tax, so what goes into your bank account. Now if you're receiving it weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, you're going to have to adjust that to reflect a rough monthly amount. So And usually, if you receive that once, your paycheck once a week, you would times that by 52 and then divide it by 12. If it's bi-weekly, you would times that by 26 weeks and then divide that number by 12 months to get to your total monthly amount. Obviously, if it's monthly, you already know that monthly amount. So you would enter that into this section, and by doing this, it helps calculate your financial opportunity. And what the sheet will do is it'll take all the information that you've put into your monthly cash flow sheet and then the monthly debt payments, and it will outline for you where money is going. So how much is going to expenses total, how much is going to savings, and how much is going to debt repayment, and simply what of your monthly amount is left over. Now, for some people, your monthly estimated financial opportunity that's listed there may be negative. If it's negative, then you have significant expenses. Could be, from mortgages to car payments, that sort of thing, that are putting a very constrained reality on your monthly cash flow. So obviously that's something that, anywhere where you can strip back, that's great. But if you are in the negatives, then you may need to really work at how to make adjustments to that cash flow to bring it to a more positive amount. But for a vast majority of households, that number is not necessarily going to be negative. And what the estimated monthly financial opportunity is, or it's often something I refer to as the financial black hole, but a financial opportunity is much more positive. So the financial opportunity is how much money per month is going towards things that you don't realize you're spending money on. And it's, that financial black hole where money seems to just disappear. And with that, you'll be able to, with a lot of the techniques discussed in episode 2, you're going to be able to shrink that financial hole. And by shrinking that, you create for yourself a financial opportunity to find money that can then be used for more aggressive debt repayment, can be used to put more into savings and fund your dreams. So that's the most important part of this cash flow worksheet. And again, if it ends up being a negative opportunity, still there needs to be changes made to the rest of the cash flow sheet to try and make the numbers work a bit more. Now, often people will try and restructure debts and consolidate loans and maybe move it into a mortgage. And, I caution that. It's not that it may make sense in number wise, in the math of it, but the reality of how you spend money, it may not be best to consolidate. It may be best to either try and make a bit more money somehow, or really cut back to make those changes, because paying back a 19% credit card is much more motivational than being wrapped up into a 3 to 4% mortgage, where you then take forever to pay it off. Because it's not just about your monthly payment; it's about how long do you want to have these debts sitting there before you can be clear of them, get them paid off, and then have a larger percentage of your money going towards things you want to do, things you'd like to have, or things you'd like to do for fueling those dreams of yours. So that's that's the monthly cash flow. You know, the intention was not to go through line by line, and I can see how at first glance it looks just like a budget. But often, you know, putting in the housing costs and the details, I mean, those things are kind of easy. You can look at a statement, or look at your online banking, and you'll be able to see a lot of those expenses. Those are the quick and easy ones to fill out, and you probably even know some of these expenses off by heart or within a few dollars. The It's really the daily costs and those discretionary costs, and the discretionary costs is everything from eating out to traveling to hobbies and your pets. That's a big one. Any kind of children's activities, fitness, gifts. Those are the expenses that are really hard to tie down, and that's why they're separated out there. And so you just do your best and don't let it hinder your moving on in the process, right? Estimate what you do in groceries. It may be off by a lot, it may not be off by much. Doesn't matter. Just do your best, put it in there, and it'll give you an idea as to what you have. And again, once you go to the financial opportunity tab, for the vast majority of people, you're going to have a financial opportunity listed there, and it's going to really be your opportunity to make those big differences in your life. So you really want to focus on that, and then go back to episode 2 from a couple weeks ago, where we talk about emotional spending and learn about how to shrink that financial black hole. So that's simple budgeting, by eliminating the budget and focusing on your cash flow. So around this time, at the end of the episode, we usually have a time for a question or two. I had received a question earlier, and I'll just bring it up. So this question is from Samantha, and Samantha asks, there are so many ways to manage your money, and she states, like using jars. What should I use? So there's a lot of advice. There's a lot of advice on how to better spend your money, how to manage your money, and I know I'm just adding more voices to that. When it comes to budgeting, I mean, in managing your money, it's really what works for you. What I found working with clients is, a lot of them have tried either what they've seen on TV or TV shows or read in books, and it works for a little bit, or doing the budget works at first, but then it's hard to track all your expenses and keep up to date, and life gets busy, and then the whole budget's out of whack, and it's too big of a deal to go back and fix it after a few months have gone by, plus you don't really know where you're at, that it just doesn't last in the long term. And that's why usually I found managing cash flow and really focusing on the emotional spending, that again discussed a few weeks ago in episode 2, using techniques on that really seems to move things forward. A lot of this is habit based more than it is numbers or money based, and so it's really just finding what works for you. For some people, putting money in jars and some of those emotional expenses Um, you know, fill into those jars in some of those systems. Also, some people use envelopes and that sort of thing. I mean, it really, it's whatever works for you. I mean, I just want to see you be successful and have the money to do what you want in life and not have it hold you back. So if it's not my methods that work for you, I it doesn't bother me in the slightest. It, some people really like managing the budget and the numbers and reflecting and having that all sorted out. If that works for you, you know, go ahead and do it. It's great, I'm happy for you and I'm proud of you for doing it. But when you know, it's really whatever you find works. So if something's not really working with the way you operate, with the way you are, there's nothing wrong with you or how you do it. It just maybe you need to find something that better matches what you need to do, right? So to me, the envelopes or the jars, life again, it's just kind of like the budget, right? Well, you know, I have no idea I go out to the movies so rarely now since I've had kids that if I put money in an entertainment jar, it would just fill up with money. Not, and then that one time that I want to go out, maybe it doesn't line up with how much I had saved there for that one item. And sometimes you have guests over and it's a bit of entertainment and a bit of groceries, right? So, that's why with the weekly spending amount that went over in the emotional spending episode, is really just managing that money, right? It's not that we are unable to manage money, right? We just can't manage our entire amount all at once, right? But if you break down to those emotional expenses that you can make decisions and you can make different decisions on, then that really can make a big impact. And I find that works. I find it's worked with a lot of my clients. But it's not the only way. I mean, one thing I do caution though is there's advice that may or may not work for you out there. And then there's advice that is just bad, right? So advice that may not work for you, advice to do money jars, advice to do money envelopes. Some advice is, that I hear is, eat rice and beans until you get everything paid off. Just cut everything back to the bone. And if that works for you, that's great. It's just that each of those methods may not work for you. But bad advice is, so to do this budget, what I recommend is putting everything on credit card because the credit card will help you track your spending better. Or the bank gives you a finance tracker that, allows you to see how much you spend, right? And the trouble with that is now you're increasing how much you spend on your credit card, which the banks love. And you really have no better idea of where you're spending your money. Yes, it might create a nice pie chart for you and you can see how much you spend on groceries. But the trouble with that is if you go to a grocery store that sells clothing, sells electronics, sells a lot more than just food, and you put that on your credit card, it's going to flow through as groceries, not as entertainment, not as electronics. It's going to flow through as groceries. So once you have a nice pie chart, you'll see that you spend a lot on groceries, and you'll look at that and say, well, I can't cut back on groceries. Groceries are essential items, right? But you may be spending hundreds or thousands of dollars in that category above and beyond what you need to. And it doesn't help you focus on your financial black hole. It doesn't help you shrink what you are emotionally spending on, right? So, again, do what works for you. May not be my methods, but there is a strategy out there that will work for you. And if you try what I recommend here and it's not really working for you, then please reach out to me. Please reach out to the email or Twitter, and be happy to help you see how we can either make this work for you, or maybe put you onto something else that may work better. But I've had a very high success rate with people I've worked with on this by really just focusing on that emotional spending. And then you can plan. Once you have the money, it's all about finding the money. When you have money, now you can decide, well, do I pay back debts? Do I put money in savings? That's all the second step, right? And but you have to be able to find the money first and do that, right? So otherwise, all other advice doesn't really matter. So thank you very much, Samantha, for that question. And that does it for the show today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back live next Tuesday at noon Eastern. Hope you'll join us again. And have yourself a great week. Talk to you soon.